How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. Part 2, The Use of Salesmanship in Marketing Personal Services. Every person who succeeds in any calling must understand and apply the principles of successful negotiation with others known as salesmanship. Part 2 of this book is devoted entirely to analysis of the principles of selling as applied in marketing personal services. Quibbling over salary to start with has lost many a man the big opportunity of a lifetime. If the position you seek is one that you know you can throw your whole heart into, take it, even if you have to work for nothing until you deliver a good sample of your goods. Thereafter, you will receive pay in proportion to the quality and quantity of the work you perform. 12. Choosing your job. You have the privilege of choosing any position you desire, as an objective toward which to work. The making of this choice is the first step you must take in marketing your services effectively. Moreover, it is a responsibility that you alone must assume, as no other person can satisfactorily make the choice for you. Before deciding what position or calling you desire, decide whether you merely want a position or the position for which you are best fitted by desire, education, temperament, and native ability. The next decision to be made is that of determining whether you prefer a position that offers great opportunity in the future with modest pay at the start, or one that yields the maximum amount of pay but offers no promise for the future. In other words, you must decide whether you wish to start at the top or at the bottom of the ladder. Upon this decision depends to a large extent the ultimate amount of your earning capacity, since it is obvious that one who starts at the top can move in only one direction. Factors that should influence your choice of occupation. Observe with profit the frequency with which the word decision appears throughout this book. The marketing of personal service, in an effective manner, calls for many decisions. The following are factors that enter into the marketing of personal services in connection with which you must reach decisions. 1. Decide which calling or occupation you like best. Careful analysis of many thousands of men and women has shown that one experiences the greatest and most enduring success when engaged in the work that one likes best. When one enters into that sort of work, it is with enthusiasm and zeal akin to that employed when playing a game. No person should voluntarily choose an occupation into which he does not feel he can throw his whole heart and soul. 2. Decide what type of employer you prefer. It is just as important for you to choose your employer with care as it is for the employer to choose his employees with care. In your choice of an employer, pick one in whom you have confidence and from whose example of conduct you may benefit. Choose one from whom you may gather useful knowledge connected with the occupation of your choice. Your employer should become, as he will in fact, your teacher. Be sure that the teacher is capable. 3. Decide the amount of money you intend to make your position yield year by year for the first 5 years. Then, proceed to render service that will justify the amounts upon which you have decided. Remember that the amount of your annual earnings is the equivalent of 6% of the capital value of your brains. For example, if your income is $6,000 a year, you have in your brain capital the equivalent of $100,000. Regard this capital as something that must be kept at work efficiently if you are to collect the income. 4. Decide, and this decision is most important, exactly the quality and the quantity of service you intend to deliver in return for the income you expect to demand and deliver, at least that, no less. The majority of people devote more time to thinking about the money they want or need than they do to creating ways and means of earning that amount through an equivalent of service. 5. Decide to what extent you are handicapped by the major causes of failure and select an occupation that will be conducive to the elimination of that handicap. These major causes are explained in the author's book, Think and Grow Rich. These 5 decisions must be made before you are ready to create a plan for marketing your services. They constitute 5 of the most important decisions you will ever be called upon to make. Reach them promptly, but with due thought and deliberation, because your whole future depends upon the sort of decisions you make. If you are just starting out in search of your first position, it will be permissible for you to accept temporary employment such as you may need for living expenses until you have had time to gather the information required to make these 5 decisions intelligently. Do not make the mistake of permitting your temporary employment to become your life work because of indifference or habit. 98% of the people of the world may be considered failures from the viewpoint of earnings and occupation. Also, 98% of the people holding positions have drifted into them and remain there because they lack the power of decision to choose more suitable positions. One of the most pathetic sights I have ever witnessed is that of a man who has committed himself to the wearisome treadmill of toil for his entire lifetime, where he must spend 6 days out of every 7 at labor that he does not like. Such a man is in a prison to which he has sentenced himself for a term approximating 6/7 of his life. Moreover, he is no less a prisoner than the man who is behind bars, the only difference being that he has a slightly wider scope of freedom 1 day out of every 7. Performing labor that one does not like is one of the great tragedies of civilization. Stating the case conversely, voluntary choice of an occupation that one does like and into which one may throw himself wholeheartedly requires greater willpower and more force of character than the average person is disposed to exercise. Observe with significance that I did not say more force of character than the average person possesses. Possession of personal power and use of it are two different things. The reason one should choose an occupation that one likes is obvious. Service rendered in connection with an occupation that one enjoys is never burdensome toil, because it is a form of labor that one enjoys. You get tired, not from overwork but from lack of interest in what you are doing. Here is an appropriate place at which to reply to the person who asks, how can I avoid engaging in labor that I do not like? The answer is, you can avoid it by firmly deciding you will not become a prisoner for life in a prison of your own making. Or, if you find yourself temporarily in such a prison because of the necessity of living, you can release yourself by deciding that you are going to select another occupation and then follow that decision with action in harmony with the instructions described in this book. The book was written with the primary idea of serving as a key by which men and women may release themselves from prisons of labor that they do not like. It will serve as such a key for all who follow it. We are all creatures of habit. We are where we are and what we are because of the habits of which we have become the victims, voluntarily or involuntarily. We are victims of the habits of thought and the habits of action. We can change our station in life, and this is the only way we can change it, by changing our habits. You might as well know here and now that you cannot hope to market your personal services more advantageously without changing your present habits. If your habits were constructive, there would be neither the desire or the necessity for you to concern yourself about marketing your personal services differently. Something for nothing. Life has no bargain counters. Everything has a price that must be paid in one form or another. No man is smart enough to cheat life. It has been tried by the smartest of men without success. The price of success in marketing personal services is measured in a great variety of terms and equivalents, all of which have been plainly described in this book. Familiarize yourself with these price tags and decide if you are willing to pay the price. If you are reading this book in the hope that it may explain some plan of hocus pocus by which you may sell your services for more than they are worth, lay the book down right now. On the other hand, if you want money in greater quantities than you are now receiving and are prepared to give in return an equivalent of service, this book will guide you safely over the pitfalls and mistakes that even the most sincere sometimes make. This is an age when the predominating tendency of man is to get without giving. That tendency toward avarice and greed is in the very air, and you will become the victim of it by the example of others around you if you do not watch yourself. I am trying to emphasize this for the benefit of young people who have not yet become the victims of this mad desire for something for nothing. I qualify my statement to apply to young men and women because I know that but few, if any, of the older ones whose habits have become fixed, will pay any attention to this warning. Nature balances her books and asks for an accounting every so often. When the accounting time comes, as it always does, those who have been lucky enough to acquire temporary possession of something for which they have not paid full value are forced to disgorge. This rule applies to the delivery of personal services just as to all other transactions. One may get by for a time by rendering services that are inadequate in quality and quantity, but nature's auditor awaits such a person just around the corner. This chapter may appear to be a dry preachment on the morals of salesmanship of personal services because truth is often less romantic than fiction. To all who so consider this chapter, I would offer the suggestion that it conforms perfectly to the rules of conduct that have been followed, consciously or unconsciously, by every man who has accumulated and kept a great fortune. The lives of all successful people are controlled and guided by rules of conduct that are exacting and often devoid of romance. Before leaving this chapter, make one more decision. Would you prefer instructions that are sound and helpful but free from fiction, or those that are optimistic, fictional, romantic, and unsound? This book was not written with the purpose of describing how easy it is to receive big money by rendering inadequate service, but for the purpose of describing definite ways of earning money by rendering its equivalent in satisfactory service. I am, by nature, an optimist. I would not rob labor of its romance if I could do so. To me, there is nothing more romantic in life than a man and a job that are suited to one another. Happiness is the ultimate height toward which every human being is striving. If life offers anything that will bring more happiness than the privilege of rendering useful service one enjoys, I do not know what it is. Millions of people are out of employment and other millions realize from their labor barely enough for existence. Out of this experience have come many helpful lessons, among them the sure knowledge that there is one thing worse than being forced to labor. It is being forced not to labor. No man can be happy without some form of occupation. Many have tried to find happiness in idleness. They have failed. Enduring happiness comes through serving. All other forms of happiness are transitory and delusive. Happiness comes from aspiring, not from acquiring. No man can be happy in whose heart there is not the hope of achievement yet unattained. Men who have millions of dollars in wealth find no happiness in wealth. If they are happy, the happiness comes from aiming, hoping, creating, and building plans for future achievement. I know of no exception to this rule, despite the fact that I have a personal acquaintance with scores of men of great wealth. I am trying, as you may have observed, not merely to show you how to market your personal services effectively, but how to find happiness through your efforts as well. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 13. Selecting a definite major aim as your life work. Singleness of purpose is a quality without which no one may attain outstanding success. This is an age of specialization. It is also an age of keen competition that does not favor the person who cannot excel in some specific occupation. The 5 fundamental steps to success. There are 5 fundamental steps that must be taken by all who succeed. They are: 1. Choice of a definite goal to be attained. 2. Development of sufficient power to attain one's goal. 3. Perfection of a practical plan for attaining one's goal. 4. Accumulation of specialized knowledge necessary for the attainment of one's goal. 5. Persistence in carrying out the plan. Every successful person follows, in one form or another, this 5-step program. Some follow it unconsciously or by accident, while others follow it with a definite purpose and by design. Some of the advantages of a definite aim. Working with definiteness of purpose toward a single goal has many advantages, among them the following. First, singleness of purpose forces one to specialize and specialization tends toward perfection. Second, a definite goal permits one to develop the capacity to reach decisions quickly and firmly. Third, definiteness of purpose enables one to master the habit of procrastination. Fourth, definiteness of purpose saves the time and energy one would otherwise waste while wavering between 2 or more possible courses of action. Fifth, a definite purpose serves as a road map that charts the direct route to the end of one's journey. Sixth, definiteness of purpose fixes one's habits so that they are taken over by the subconscious mind and used as a motivating force, involuntarily, in driving toward one's goal. Seventh, definiteness of purpose develops self-confidence and attracts the confidence of other people. The disadvantages that follow and blast the lives of those who have no clearly defined purpose are as thick and numberless as the gay motes which people the sunbeams, the purposeless lives and wrecked fortunes of a tragic host along the colorless shores of every sea whereon human endeavor has been launched, speak of millions without objective who have held to no fixed goal. Drifting people are like rudderless ships and all the voyages of their lives are bound in shallows and miseries. Every cluttered tenement bears tragic evidence of this truth. Weak, pale, and undernourished children who have never stood straight-limbed and fair in God's sunshine convince us of this truth. Women, pinched of face, poorly clad and with worried eyes, who have not time to look up from their dismal drudgery, mutely tell us of husbands without purpose. Restless and scowling men are they who have not one great goal. Truth, naked and undeniable, points an accusing finger at the shambles of human figures who know not where they go nor why. The North Star was not more fixed in the heavens than Caesar in his purpose. History is rich in the recital of men who have hitched their wagon to a star, a single star, and ridden it into the heights of great achievement. Great men in ages gone have given us words to be used as symbols to guide us on our way, but no words should be graven so high in the sky, there to arrest the attention of young men and young women, challenge their consideration and bring them to a state of thoughtful reflection as these two words, quo animo, with what mind or intention. Those who know where they are going usually get there. They do not dissipate their strength in aimless expenditure of time and energy, following first one course and then another, but concentrate their efforts upon a definite objective, exerting all powers to attain that end. Brawn brings a daily wage. The price of it is fixed by the law of supply and demand. General services, rendered by one who has not specialized, brings but little more than brawn. Brains, when marketed through a definite aim, have no fixed price. The sky is the limit in the marketing of specialized talent. These are statements of obvious fact, yet 98 out of every 100 people fail all through life because they do not follow the principle of working with definiteness of purpose. Every failure will teach you a lesson that you need to learn if you will keep your eyes and ears open and be willing to be taught. Every adversity is usually a blessing in disguise. Without reverses and temporary defeat, you would never know the sort of metal of which you are made. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 14. The habit of doing more than paid for. The habit of rendering more service and better service than one is paid to render is an absolute essential to the advantageous marketing of personal services. In the previous chapter your attention was called to the importance of the word decision. In this chapter your attention is directed to the word habit, especially as it applies to the amount and quality of service rendered. Among the many sound reasons for rendering more service and better service than expected are the following. 1. This habit turns the spotlight of favorable attention upon those who develop it. 2. This habit enables one to profit by the law of contrast, since the majority of people have formed and apply the opposing habit by rendering as little service as they can. 3. This habit gives one the benefit of the law of increasing returns and insures one against the disadvantages of the law of decreasing returns, thus eventually enabling one to receive more pay than one would receive without this habit. 4. This habit ensures one preferred employment at preferred wages and permanency of employment as long as there is employment to be had. The person who practices this habit is the last to be removed from the payroll when business is poor and the first to be taken back after a layoff. 5. This habit develops greater skill, efficiency, and also greater earning ability and tends to give one preference over others. 6. This habit makes one practically indispensable to one's employer because it is a habit not found in the majority of people, and because it induces employers to relegate greater responsibilities to those who practice it. The capacity to assume responsibility is the quality that brings the highest monetary returns. 7. This habit leads to promotion because it indicates that those who practice it have ability for supervision and leadership not found in those who follow the opposite habit. 8. This habit enables one to set one's own salary. If it cannot be obtained from one employer, it may be obtained from his competitor. These are but a few of the major advantages of rendering more service and better service than one is paid to render. If you render no more service than you are paid to render, then it is obvious you are not entitled to any more pay. This is a fact against which there is no argument. Every business has either a potential or a real asset known as goodwill. While this is an asset not generally listed in the inventory as such, it is, nevertheless, an asset without which no business can grow and but few, if any, businesses can exist for any great length of time. An individual who renders more service and better service than paid for may also have a goodwill asset that will ensure him opportunities and advantages in connection with the sale of personal services that are not available to the person who does not practice this habit. This goodwill asset is generally known as one's reputation for efficiency. It is an asset without which no individual can market his personal services to best advantage. The strongest and most attractive selling feature any individual may have, in marketing his personal services, is the habit of rendering service that is greater in quantity and superior in quality. The habit of rendering more service and better service than one agrees to render for a stipulated sum is one of the most important principles through which businesses grow to huge proportions and businessmen accumulate great fortunes. The principle works on behalf of an employer just as it does on behalf of an employee, a fact that a few employers have discovered. Men become harmonious, loyal, and cooperative in their efforts because of motive. Men who achieve outstanding success, whether as individuals or as the heads of business enterprises, understand how to attract the qualities of harmony, loyalty, and cooperation through appropriate motive. Every individual who works for a salary naturally wants more money and a better position. Not every such individual, however, understands that better positions and greater pay come as the result of motive and that the greatest of all motives with which these desirable benefits may be attracted is that of rendering more service and better service than one is paid to render. Your greatest opportunity may be right where you are. It is man's inherent nature to seek what he believes to be greener pastures in the distance. When a man begins to look for a better position and more pay, he usually seeks opportunity in the distance with some other employer. Sometimes this may be necessary, but changes in employment, while they may bring advantages, always bring some disadvantages, the most outstanding of which is the fact that one is never as efficient in a new position, a new environment, and among new associates, as he is where he is familiar with the details of his work and has the confidence of his associates. Moreover, the changing of positions deprives an individual of much of the goodwill value built around himself through long association with an employer. Before deciding to change employers, be sure that you have exhausted the possibilities of your present position. Take inventory of your job and ascertain in what ways you can make yourself more valuable to your employer. Follow this practice until you have made yourself as nearly indispensable to him as possible, remembering meanwhile that indispensability is the only thing behind which you can successfully hedge when you ask your employer for a better position or more pay. If your employer is a successful businessman, he is probably also intelligent. He has the ability to approximate your value to his business. Before you make demands for more pay, or seek opportunity elsewhere, be sure that you are worth more by having first practiced the habit of rendering more service and better service than your employer has expected or demanded of you. If you have followed this habit long enough for your employer to have observed that it is a habit, you are in a position to ask him to discuss readjustment of salary. You are not likely to suffer if your employer is successful and intelligent. People sometimes outgrow both their positions and their employers. More often, however, the reverse proves true. Before deciding to change employers, take inventory of your employer and his business. Ascertain whether or not they offer you a future commensurate with your ability. If the analysis shows that an adequate opportunity exists where you are, develop that opportunity. You already have your foot inside the door. You have your employer's confidence or you would not be where you are. Capitalize this opportunity by making yourself indispensable, and very soon the law of increasing returns will begin to reward you. Every competent farmer understands and makes use of the law of increasing returns. He puts this law into operation in the following manner. First, he selects soil that is appropriate for the crop that he expects it to yield. Second, he then prepares this soil by plowing and harrowing and perhaps by fertilization, so it will be favorable to the seed he plants. Third, he plants seed that have been carefully selected for soundness, knowing that poor seed cannot yield a bountiful crop. Fourth, he then gives nature a chance to compensate him for his labor through an appropriate period of time. He does not sow the seed one day and expect to reap a harvest the next. Having taken these 4 steps, all of which have been in advance of his reward, the farmer knows that he will profit by the law of increasing returns when harvest time arrives and that he will get back from his labor not merely the amount of seed he planted in the soil, but a greatly increased quantity. Marketing personal services effectively involves this same principle. Prepare carefully the soil in which you intend to plant the seed of service by selecting an employer who is intelligent and successful. Then, cultivate that soil and prepare it through conduct that is harmonious and cooperative. Plant in the soil the finest seed of service and be sure to plant an abundance of that seed, as not all seed will germinate and grow. Do not expect to harvest a crop of pay before you have sown the seed of service. After the seed has been sown, do not become impatient if you do not reap your reward immediately. Give the seed time to germinate. Meanwhile, you are making yourself indispensable to your employer and ensuring permanency of employment. If, after you have done your part, your employer does not show his appreciation, do not stop sowing the seed of service, which is right in both quality and quantity. Keep right on sowing because it will provide you with the evidence of your capacity to render useful and desirable service if you find it necessary to seek employment elsewhere. The habit of frequent changing of positions places an individual under the disadvantage of the law of diminishing returns because no employer wants to permit a rolling stone to become a factor in his business. This is worthy of application before you decide to change employers. You are a merchant. You have the equivalent of a commodity to market. That equivalent is your personal services. Use the same principles of sound judgment in marketing your services that a successful merchant uses in marketing his merchandise. You know, of course, what happens to the merchant who shortweighs his customers or cheats them at trade. He pays by loss of business. You know, on the other hand, what happens to the merchant who builds confidence by rendering service and delivering merchandise that measure up to or exceed the customer's expectations. John Wanamaker, Marshall Field, and Sears Roebuck built businesses that have become landmarks in American merchandising. Their motto is, "The customer is always right," and they go to great extremes to make this motto mean what it says, even permitting some of their customers to take advantage of them in order to put teeth into that policy. No person may be sure of success, no matter what may be his calling, without applying this principle of giving before trying to get. Failure to apply this principle will render practically useless every other principle for the successful marketing of personal services. Emphasis of this principle seems doubly necessary because of the prevailing tendency that obtains all over the world at this time to seek a harvest in wealth without first sowing the seed of service. The depression that began in 1929 was a most impressive example of the existence of the law of diminishing returns. People went money mad and tried to get without giving through the law of chance. That law is tricky. It permits you to win just often enough to lure you on to sure destruction. Every person whose major source of capital is his capacity to render personal services should remember the lesson taught by the Depression and profit by it. From that experience came a worldwide demonstration that he profits most who serves best. During Prohibition, I visited a small town just across the border of Southern California in Mexico. I witnessed the spectacle of 40,000 men and women who had come across the line to patronize saloons and gambling halls. Except for the Depression, I have never witnessed so huge a demonstration of man's lack of understanding of the futility of gambling. The experience aroused my curiosity and caused me to investigate for the purpose of understanding and ascertaining how well Lady Luck favored those 40,000 go-getters who were looking for something for nothing. The government authorities in charge informed me that, by conservative estimate, fewer than 300 of the 40,000 people who visit the town every Sunday go back over the borderline with more money than they brought with them. The officials also estimated that the net value to the saloon keepers and gaming proprietors of a Sunday's business averaged about $10 per person or $400,000. They estimated that the 300 who were lucky enough to go away with more than they brought, took away not to exceed $20 each, or a total of $6,000. Compare these two sums and you have about the percentage of opportunity one has of winning when one tries to get without giving. The odds against the person who tries to get without giving an equivalent apply to the person who attempts to collect pay before delivering adequate service, just as they do to people who gamble. Those who try to harvest before sowing generally believe themselves wise enough to beat the game. It cannot be done. The business depression proved conclusively that the strongest men living, just like the small fry, fall and are crushed by this unsound belief. Every person whose income is derived from the sale of personal services has occasional opportunity to cheat by delivering a shortage in quantity or deficiency in quality, but the cheater only cheats himself because this form of default is a mild method of stealing, and those who practice it write the results indelibly into their own characters to be heard from later on. Most men can cheat others occasionally without detection. But no man can cheat others without observation by his own conscience, and that conscience is an official recorder of one's acts and thoughts. It writes the record of every thought and deed into the fabric of one's character. A clear conscience is an asset comparable to no other. You will discover this to be true when you come to the time when you wish to negotiate for the readjustment of your pay. Master salesmanship, regardless of the wares one may be selling, is based upon absolute faith in the thing one is offering for sale. Remember this when you bargain for the sale of your services. E. M. Statler became the most successful hotel man in the world by rendering more service and better service than his guests were asked to pay for. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 15. A pleasing personality. A major portion of your responsibility, regardless of your calling, is that of being able to negotiate your way through life with a minimum of friction between yourself and other people. To negotiate with others without friction is a rare ability. It is a necessity in marketing personal services effectively. A pleasing personality is an asset without which it is difficult to market personal services or to keep them marketed. Andrew Carnegie rated this quality at the head of the list of qualifications for success and went so far as to say that personality could often be substituted for brains. Perhaps Mr. Carnegie did not mean for that statement to be taken literally, but used it merely to emphasize the importance of a pleasing personality in marketing personal services. Anyway, it is well worth thinking about. The person who markets his or her services effectively must be an able salesman. A pleasing personality is an essential quality in salesmanship. Let us approach the study of this subject on a common ground of understanding by defining pleasing personality as follows. A pleasing personality is one that has flexibility and adaptability sufficient to permit an individual to harmonize with any environment, and the necessary magnetism to dominate through attraction. A pleasing personality consists of a blending of many qualities, the more important of which are 1. Good showmanship. An efficient showman is one who understands and applies the art of catering to the masses. He appeals to people through their imagination and keeps them interested through curiosity. A good showman is quick to recognize and to capitalize on other people's prejudices, biases, likes, and dislikes at the psychological moment. 2. Harmony within self. No one may enjoy a personality without first developing harmony and control within his own mind. 3. Definiteness of purpose. The procrastinator who drifts through life without plan or purpose can never be pleasing to others. To have a pleasing personality, one must at least be definite in developing relationships of harmony with others and in adopting a major goal at which to aim as a life work. 4. Appropriateness of clothing. The person with a pleasing personality dresses in clothing that is appropriate not only to himself but also to his calling. First impressions are lasting. Inappropriate wearing apparel creates a prejudice that is difficult to overcome. Clothes may not make the man, but they give him an advantageous start, if selected with taste. 5. Posture and carriage of the body. One does not have to be a character analyst to be able to judge other people by the way they walk and the general posture of their bodies. Alertness in posture and carriage of the body indicates alertness of the brain and keenness of perception. 6. Voice. The tone, volume, pitch, and general emotional coloring of one's voice constitute important factors of a pleasing personality. A high-pitched voice is never pleasing, it is often offensive. 7. Sincerity of purpose. This quality needs but little, if any, explanation. Without it, one may not have the confidence of others. 8. Choice of language. The man with a pleasing personality expresses himself in language appropriate to his calling and avoids the use of slang and profanity. 9. Poise. Poise is based upon self-confidence and self-control. Lack of it irritates and annoys other people. 10. A keen sense of humor. Perhaps no other quality is more essential than this. Without it, one's life is a series of ups and downs, mostly downs. 11. Unselfishness. Selfishness and a pleasing personality are never found together. No one is attracted to a selfish person. 12. Facial expression. Facial expression is an accurate medium for the interpretation of one's moods and thoughts. It is the character analyst's barometer, by which he may measure accurately how one's mind functions. 13. Positive thought. Negative thoughts and a pleasing personality do not make good bedfellows because the vibrations of thought are picked up by others. Be sure, therefore, to release only such thoughts as will be pleasing to other people. 14. Enthusiasm. People who lack enthusiasm cannot arouse others. Enthusiasm is an essential factor in all forms of salesmanship, the sale of personal services included. 15. A sound body. Poor health does not attract people. Moreover, one cannot be enthusiastic without health and vigor. A bottle of citrate of magnesia or an internal bath would have saved many persons the loss of their positions. 16. Imagination. Alertness of the imagination is one of the most essential factors of a pleasing personality. Without it, people are generally referred to as dumb. 17. Tact. Lack of this quality has cost many men their positions, to say nothing of their greatest opportunities. Lack of tact is usually expressed through loose conversation and boldness of expression. 18. Versatility. A general acquaintance with the important subjects of current interest and the deeper problems of life and living is a quality conducive to a pleasing personality. 19. The art of being a good listener. Train yourself to listen attentively when other people are speaking and do not show ill-breeding by breaking in and taking the conversation away from others. Give your ears a chance. Your tongue will take care of itself. 20. The art of forceful speech. No single factor of a pleasing personality is more important than this. Forceful speech is the salesman's greatest asset. Without it, he is sunk before he begins to swim. It is an art that may be acquired by practice. The instructions for making an interesting speech are, have something to say that is worth listening to and say it with all the enthusiasm at your command. 21. Personal magnetism. This term has reference to controlled sex energy. It is the only factor of a pleasing personality that may not be acquired. One is either born with it or does not have it. Most people have it, but do not control it. It is the major asset of every great salesman and every great leader in all walks of life. Its importance as a factor of a pleasing personality entitles it to appear at the head instead of the foot of the list. This may appear to be a rather formidable list of qualities that one must possess in order to have a pleasing personality, but there is encouragement in the fact that the majority of these qualities may be had through practice plus definite determination to possess them. As a part of your preparation as a salesman of your personal services, you should check yourself carefully against this list of factors of a pleasing personality, find out in which you are deficient, and begin at once to correct those deficiencies. You will find more explicit instructions for making this analysis in the chapter on personal analysis. You want all that your personal services can be marketed for, but you have no reason to expect your services to yield more than they are worth. Make them worth more. You can begin by rebuilding your personality. It is almost certain that you will find in this long list of factors that constitute a pleasing personality, some in which you are deficient. That is the place for you to begin rebuilding yourself. A few who have achieved success through a pleasing personality. It may be helpful if you are reminded of some of the men who have risen to high places in life, not because of their superiority of education, but because they understood the art of selling themselves to advantage. William Jennings Bryan kept himself sold to a large proportion of the American people for more than 30 years, almost solely upon his ability as an orator. Bryan was not a really great thinker. He was popular because of his ability to reach people through an appeal to their imaginations. The tone of his voice was responsible for much of his popularity. Theodore Roosevelt kept himself well sold to the American people, in the highest position any American can hold, through almost 2 terms as President of the United States and just barely missed a 3rd term. He was a great showman and an appealing public speaker, dynamic, energetic, powerful. Will Rogers converted a pleasing personality into a huge fortune, through clowning. He was not a great actor, but he acquired the ability to please people. The late Knute Rockne developed the Notre Dame football team into the most popular team known to the American people. He was an able showman and possessed the ability to inject his personality into his players. The influence of personality on atmosphere. Every human being carries with him what is known as an individual atmosphere. This atmosphere is but the sum total of an individual's reflection of the factors of a pleasing personality, plus any of the factors of a negative personality that the individual may possess. This atmosphere is contagious. Every business and every place of employment has also a distinctive atmosphere that consists of the combined personalities of those who work there. A person with a dominating personality of a pleasing nature may so color the atmosphere of the place where he works that the spirit of the entire place will also be pleasing. On the other hand, one person who has a dominating personality of a negative nature may transmit that personality to everyone in a place of business so that the atmosphere of the place becomes displeasing and unpleasant. Emerson had this truth in mind when he said, "Every business is the extended shadow of one person." Remember that you are contributing through your personality to the atmosphere of the home in which you live and the place of business where you work. The feeling one gets when one walks into either the Marshall Field store in Chicago, or the John Wanamaker store in Philadelphia, is pleasing and attractive because of the positive atmosphere found in them. Every home carries an atmosphere that indicates clearly whether there is harmony or friction as the dominating factor of the home. The positive or pleasing atmosphere value of a place of business, while it is an intangible asset, is one of the greatest assets any business can have. Such an atmosphere may be had only through a combination of positive individual personalities. The man or woman who carries a grouch into his or her place of employment does almost as much damage to his or her fellow employees and to the business as might be done if poison were placed in the drinking water. Employers who understand this principle, and some of them do understand it, watch very carefully to see that only people with pleasing personalities work in their establishment. The major factors of a negative personality. We come now to examine the qualities that constitute a negative personality. Analyze and check yourself carefully to make sure that you are not unconsciously carrying around with you an atmosphere that causes people to dislike you. The list is as follows. 1. Disloyalty. There is no substitute for loyalty. The person who lacks loyalty is poverty-stricken, regardless of his other qualities or worldly possessions. Such a person cannot possibly market his personal services effectively because the market for those services will play out as soon as that quality is disclosed. 2. Dishonesty. There is no substitute for honesty. It is the keystone to the arch of character. Without sound character, no person can market his services effectively. 3. Greed. A person who is cursed by greed is never liked by others. It is a quality that cannot be kept under cover. It will assert itself so clearly that all may observe it and shun the person who reflects it. 4. Envy and hatred. These qualities make a pleasing personality an impossibility. Like attracts like. The person who hates people will, in turn, be hated by people, regardless of company manners or attempts to cover this disagreeable trait. 5. Jealousy. This is a mild form of insanity. It is fatal to a pleasing personality. 6. Anger. Whether passive or active in form, this is a quality that arouses antagonism and makes one disliked by others. 7. Fear. This quality repels people. It never attracts. There are 6 basic fears against which every person must guard. These are negative states of mind that must be eliminated before one may develop a pleasing personality. Fear never pleases and it never attracts anything except its counterpart. 8. Revenge. A revengeful person cannot be pleasing to anyone. 9. Fault-finding. The person who has the habit of finding fault with others or with conditions cannot please. Such a person might more profitably spend his time looking within for faults. 10. Peddling scandal. The old saying that, "a dog that will fetch a bone will take one back," is true. People may listen to the scandalmonger because they cannot avoid it, but they will not like the person. 11. Uncontrolled enthusiasm. Too much enthusiasm is as bad as none. Enthusiasm, controlled and directed, is generally more effective than that which is expressed too freely. No one is attracted to the person who starts his tongue wagging and then goes off and leaves it. 12. Prevarication. The untruthful person is persona non grata in every household and in every place of business. With some people prevarication is a habit. It destroys confidence and sets up antagonism. 13. Escaping responsibility for mistakes through alibis. The alibi artist is never pleasing to others. It is better to assume responsibility for mistakes you do not make than to form the habit of trying to place responsibility for these mistakes on others. 14. Exaggeration. It is better to understate a truth than to overstate it. Exaggeration causes loss of confidence. 15. Egotism. Uncontrolled egotism is one of the most damaging of traits. There is but one form of egotism that is acceptable. It is the habit of expressing one's ideas in deeds helpful to others, not in words. Self-confidence is one of the most desirable and necessary traits, but it must be controlled and directed to definite ends, through methods that do not antagonize others. All forms of self-praise are easily recognized as evidences of inferiority complexes, therefore one's motto should be, deeds, not words. 16. Obstinacy. The person who is obstinate, stubborn, and self-willed is never pleasing. A certain amount of determination and the ability to stand by one's opinions is, of course, essential, but these qualities should not become a blanket policy. 17. Selfishness. No one likes a selfish person. This quality attracts opposition in every conceivable form. These are not all of the negative qualities of personality, but they are, on the whole, the ones that do the most damage. Somewhere in the list you may find the cause of opposition that you may have experienced from others. You cannot have a pleasing personality until you put your foot upon the neck of every one of these signals of danger. Be merciless with yourself when you check yourself against this list, remembering that an enemy discovered is an enemy half conquered. This chapter deals with subjects of a highly intimate personal nature. Remember when you step before the mirror of your own conscience, as you will if you derive real benefit from this chapter, that this book was not written as a sop to the vanity of any reader. It was written as a means of helping people to market their services effectively by first understanding and improving what they have to market. Keep this thought clearly in mind and be your most severe critic as you read, if you wish to avail yourself of the benefits that await after you have mastered the principles described in this book. A pleasing personality is a self-acquisition asset with but few exceptions. Its acquisition calls for self-control and a willingness to change destructive habits. This book has been written with the object of helping people to convert their personal services into wealth without violating the rights or arousing the antagonism of others. This will, of course, require effort. Through your personal conduct, you are establishing the limitations of your life. Just as surely as a criminal is in the penitentiary as the result of conduct through which he reflected a very negative personality, so is every reader of this book where he is because of his personality as reflected through his conduct. With these two important statements this chapter will be closed. 1. A pleasing personality will help one to market one's services effectively. 2. Sound character will help one to keep one's services marketed permanently. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 16. Cooperation. Cooperation is a quality without which no person can hope to market his personal services effectively. It is a quality that must become a habit with all who make themselves indispensable to their employers. The late Andrew Carnegie said inability to cooperate stood at the head of the list of the causes of failure. Moreover, he emphasized the fact that lack of cooperation was one deficiency that he would not tolerate, no matter how well equipped in other ways a man might be. He amplified his statement by the explanation that a man who lacks the ability either to cooperate with others or to gain cooperation from others is a disturbing element whose influence spreads with disastrous results. He then stated his point conversely by saying that a man who not only cooperated with others but who had the personality to induce others to cooperate with him, served as a powerful influence through which coordination of effort or teamwork could be produced. He should know, he made cooperation pay. Through a series of tests made by the late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and others, it was discovered that one person of the fault-finding type in an organization of 1,000 people would have the effect of coloring the mental attitude of everyone around him, thereby creating friction and dissatisfaction. Success is achieved through power. Power is developed through organized and intelligently directed knowledge. The intelligent use of knowledge calls for cooperation. Woe unto him who fails to understand and apply the principle of cooperative effort. The larger corporations have already learned that cooperation among their employees and executives is their greatest asset. It was the lack of this sort of cooperation that placed business at the mercy of labor racketeers. It is only a question of time until every well-managed business will have a system by which it may discover lack of cooperation among its employees. Friction among employees has been one of the greatest evils of the past in industry and business. The well-managed business of the future will insist upon an esprit de corps among its employees, such as business management of the past has not demanded. Those who are capable of managing business successfully have learned that no business can succeed without this spirit of harmonious cooperation. Moreover, the cooperative effort must be in spirit as well as in deed. This point is important, so bear it in mind. I am stating these facts very plainly because I am convinced that no person can market himself effectively in the future without understanding and applying the principle of harmonious cooperation. Observe with profit the emphasis upon the word harmony. Cooperation, to be effective, must be more than tentative. It must be real and it must be based upon perfect harmony. Indigestion, a bad liver, and auto-intoxication are a few of the causes of inability to cooperate. Grouchiness will turn out to be ouchiness. This statement applies to the owner of the business as well as his employees. The public has learned to expect and demand efficient and pleasant service. Your position is nothing more than your opportunity to show what sort of ability you have. You will get out of it exactly what you put into it, no more and no less. A big position is but the sum total of numerous little positions well filled. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 17. How to Create a Job. Keen imagination is essential in all forms of salesmanship. Imagination is of two forms. One is known as synthetic imagination and the other is known as creative imagination. Synthetic imagination consists of combining or bringing together two or more known ideas, principles, concepts, or laws and giving them a new use. Practically all inventions are created through the faculty of synthetic imagination because they consist merely of a new combination of old principles and ideas, or of giving old ideas or principles a new use. Creative imagination consists of interpretation of basically new ideas, plans, concepts, or principles that present themselves through the creative faculty and whose source is outside the range of the five senses of perception. Imagination can be cultivated. It is a fascinating pursuit, rich with rewards. We are concerned at this time mainly with the principle of synthetic imagination because it is the keystone to the arch of selling either personal services or commodities of any description. The faculty of imagination becomes more alert through use. In this respect, it responds like any organ of the body or group of cells. Some people have the mistaken notion that the imagination is complicated and that only geniuses make effective use of it. Through the use of his imagination, while working as a telegraph operator, James J. Hill saw that the East should be connected with the West by a dependable railway system. His ability to see this was imagination that enabled him to build and operate the Great Northern Railway system. Any other man could have done it. Organized imagination brings the highest price of any form of ability. It always has a market and it has no limitations as to value. Business depressions do not destroy the market for imagination, they merely increase the need and extend the demand for imagination. The world stands in need of men who will use their imaginations. The most desirable and highest paid positions are those that men of imagination create for themselves. Business is stagnant all over the country. Use your imagination and discover ways and means of stimulating business, even in a very small way, in any line, and you may name your own salary. The country is faced not by the necessity of solving one problem, but by the necessity of solving hundreds of problems. Pick out any one of these problems and work out, through your imagination, its solution, and your problem of acquiring money will be solved. Not all of the new ways of doing business nor the best ways have yet been found. The future will call for still more new ways. This need is your opportunity. Use your imagination and convert that opportunity into fortune. Take inventory of the shortcomings of the business in which you are employed and use your imagination for the purpose of eliminating some of them. Or, if you are not employed, use your imagination to create some plan by which you may improve some part of any business with which you may be familiar, and you will soon find a place for yourself. Positions can be made to order. This is an age of rapid-fire change in business. It is an age that was made to order for men who have and use imagination. Because business is stagnant, businessmen will try almost anything. Create some new, unique idea that is sound and sell it to them. If you are employed and find yourself worrying about the possibility of losing your job, convert the time you have been wasting on worry to a better use by creating some plan that will improve your work or add to your employer's business. You can make yourself indispensable in this way. Indispensability commands a high price and permanency of employment at all times. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 18. How to Choose an Occupation. Instructions have been offered for aiding those who wish to choose jobs intelligently. These instructions were not entirely adequate for the needs of young people who have just finished their schooling but have never held positions or chosen a vocation. Decision in connection with the choice of a life work is one of the two most important decisions that young people have the responsibility of making. The other is the decision in connection with the selection of a mate in marriage. These two decisions determine largely whether one's life shall be blessed with happiness and fortune or cursed with misery and poverty. A decision as to a vocation suited to his or her needs is a very difficult matter for any inexperienced young person. Had I chosen my vocation at the end of my high school training, I would have become a telegraph operator since this was the work that most appealed to my imagination at that time. Fortunately, a former schoolmate who had been away attending business college came home for the Christmas holidays and, before returning, sold me on the idea of going with him. My decision to take business training proved to be one of the most important decisions of my life. In the first place, this training prepared me to earn a living. In the second place, it brought me into intimate contact with some of the greatest business and industrial leaders the country has ever known. In the capacity of secretary, I literally went to school to the men for whom I worked, and I am happy to acknowledge this part of my schooling was worth more than all the other schooling I received. I am convinced that every young man and woman should take a business course and gain some experience firsthand in many lines of business before selecting a vocation. This gives one an opportunity to weigh and to consider the possibilities available in various fields of business and to make a choice of vocation that is based upon actual knowledge of the details of the chosen work. Business training not only gave me the opportunity to go to school to some of the most able men in America, but that training proved to be a veritable source of insurance against catastrophe on more than a score of occasions during the 25 years of effort when I found it necessary to stop my research and earn money. There was never a time when I could not market the knowledge that I gained in business school for more than enough to take care of my living expenses. Because of my business training, I was privileged to work for the late Dr. Elmer R. Gates and the late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone. From both of them I received knowledge of a priceless nature. Through this training, too, I was privileged to work for a doctor from whom I received much of the biological data I needed and for a noted lawyer from whom I gathered a knowledge of law and legal procedure, which has been most helpful to me. Training in business brought me the knowledge through which I obtained every promotion I ever had while working for a salary. To it I also owe the selection of my life's work, for it brought me into contact with Andrew Carnegie, Thomas A. Edison, Henry Ford, and most of the others who have been so helpful to me in the building of this philosophy. Every young man and woman ought to be able to, 1. Operate a typewriter efficiently, 2. Take shorthand notes speedily, and 3. Keep a set of books accurately, before selecting a vocation. Knowledge of these subjects is of vital importance in the successful conduct of any business or profession. The modern business college is a sort of missing link between the public schools and colleges and the field of business because the business college specializes in a form of training that is inadequately handled by the public schools. The public schools and colleges, although they should prepare young people for efficient service in business, do not. Moreover, I have learned from my experience in employing many young people, some of whom were graduates of commercial departments of high schools and others who were graduates of modern business colleges, that the business college graduate is far superior to the graduate of the commercial departments of high schools. A business college training is an absolute necessity to the person who aspires to a position as an executive in the field of business today for the reason that executives must have understudy experience of a nature that can be acquired only through business college preparation. The modern business colleges of today have had the foresight to see the dawn of a new era of business ethics that has grown out of the Depression and are preparing their graduates to adapt themselves to the new standards. The public schools on the whole have not seen this need, or if they have seen it, they are doing nothing to equip students to meet it. This chapter is intended solely for young people who have not yet selected a life work. If you are in that category, defer your decision as to a vocation until you have taken a complete business training and have applied that training for at least 2 years. Your decision then will be more sound than any you could make at this time, for it will provide an opportunity to go to school to successful men who will pay for the privilege of training you. Business training, in my case, was the result of a chance or accidental decision. Your decision to market your services through the aid of a business college training should not be accidental, it should be by design. There is no way of determining the actual value of the training I received in business college, first, because I am still in the prime of life and have before me what I consider the best part of my career, and second, because I have found through my business training the vocation that I like best and in which I am happy. Happiness and contentment cannot be measured in terms of bank balances alone. Were I forced to set a monetary value on my business college training, however, I would estimate it at no less than $1 million. Its total cost was approximately $500 in money and a year's time. The investment has yielded me more than adequate returns. There is a certain atmosphere about a business college that is most helpful to young people because all of the students in attendance are thinking and talking in terms of rendering useful service. In the public schools and colleges of today, the atmosphere often takes on an entirely different tone that savors more of play than it does of work. The best results cannot be obtained in this way. Mindful of the fact that some readers may wish to go from high school to college for the purpose of preparing themselves to take up a profession, I would particularly recommend that they take a business college training first. The competition in the professions today is very keen. Only those who understand the business foundation on which every profession must be conducted will survive. The large percentage of fatalities in the professions is due mainly to the fact that so many professional people know nothing about the fundamentals of business organization. Such knowledge is essential. Moreover, the business college trained student can easily earn his way through college. I know many successful college graduates who paid their way through college. The person who can operate a typewriter efficiently and who can take shorthand notes rapidly, can get much more out of college than the person who lacks these skills. Young women usually begin to think in terms of marriage about the time they complete their high school training. While marriage is a lofty ambition, it brings responsibilities and creates emergencies that call for wise thought and action. The woman, who has been schooled in a business college and who has had some experience in a business office, is much better prepared to assume the practical responsibilities of a home than one who has had no such training. She not only is in a position to cooperate with her husband in a spirit of sympathy and understanding in connection with his problems of earning a living, but if occasion demands, the married woman who has had business training may go back to it and earn a living. Business training, therefore, becomes a sort of insurance against dependence. Use wisdom in the selection of a business college. No statement in this chapter should be interpreted as a blanket endorsement of all business colleges. Happily, most of the business colleges in the United States are efficient and their management consists of men and women who are conscientious. But, as in all other fields, there are some that are better equipped than others to render practical service. The first thing to be looked for in the selection of a business college is age. The college that has survived a long number of years must have adequate equipment and competent teachers or it would not have lasted. The next thing to be considered is the business and ethical standing of the owner. The school whose practice or teaching is unethical cannot be long-lived. The third thing to be considered is the question of the competency of its teachers. A suggestion for financing yourself through business college. Usually the young people who pay a portion or all of their expenses while taking a business or college training get more out of their training than those who do not pay any part of their expenses. I have delivered lectures to many groups of students. The students who work their way through college are the first to arrive and they occupy the front seats, while those whose expenses are paid by their parents usually arrive late and select seats well toward the rear of the auditorium where they can make a quick getaway as soon as the lectures are finished. Those who work take copious notes on the lectures, while those who do not work usually take no notes. I have no doubt that if I could follow these young men and women into the business world, I would find that the students who worked their way through college had much less difficulty in earning a living than those who did not. I believe you'll agree with that statement. The urge of necessity is a great blessing to most people. It forces them to do the things they should do, but too often would not do without the pressure of necessity. One reason business college graduates usually find less difficulty in marketing their services is the fact that most of them are attending business college because they come from families who know from experience the urge of necessity. This is an age of unprecedented opportunity due mainly to the great need for leadership in practically every calling. Opportunity will be greatest for those who have had thorough business training. This is an age that accepts young blood in positions of responsibility. These greater opportunities of today call for greater efficiency than was acceptable 25 years ago. This machine age of efficiency in production has brought with it a demand for greater efficiency in manpower. The principles through which efficiency may be attained have been described in the pages of this book. Not one of these principles is difficult to develop or apply. In closing this chapter, your attention is called to a principle that I believe to be the factor, more than any other, which determines whether one succeeds or fails in any calling. The principle to which I have reference is so simple that its importance may be underestimated by many, especially by the young person inexperienced in business. The principle may be described as the faith and persistence to accept defeat as being nothing more than an experience from which something of value may be learned. Most people give up or let their ambition be killed when serious obstacles are met. Life is filled with obstacles that must be surmounted. Only those who have the stamina and the willingness to fight can win. Others must take the count. Do not expect that you will be one of the fortunate who never meet with serious opposition in life, for you will be no exception to the general rule. Everyone meets with opposition. Opposition should be accepted as a signal to put everything you have into its mastery. It has been my privilege during my public career to know many men and women of great achievement. Some of them I have known intimately. All of them had met with opposition that necessitated struggle and persistence. When defeat comes, as it will, accept it as a hurdle that has been placed in your way for the purpose of training you to jump higher. You will gain strength and skill from each hurdle that you surmount. Do not hate people because they oppose you. Thank them for forcing you to develop the strategy and imagination you will need to master their opposition. This is a beautiful world, and life is stocked with an abundance of everything you need, including riches and happiness, which you may have, provided you do not overindulge in the things you like best, nor permit yourself to be suppressed by the circumstances and things you do not like. Accept both the bitter and the sweet of life's cup like a real sportsman, remembering all the while that a well-rounded life requires some of each. Success without defeat would lead to autocracy, and a consequent boredom. Defeat without the counteracting effect of success would kill ambition. Be willing to accept your portion of each, but do not expect success without temporary defeat, for there is no such possibility. Now, let us see what a popular writer says. Ed Sullivan, the noted Hollywood newspaper columnist, wrote the climax of this chapter for you. He wrote out of an abundance of opportunity to observe what helps people to sell their way through life successfully. His counsel may be of great value to any young person who thinks for a moment that one can crash the gates at Hollywood or any other place without paying the price of success. A few days ago, a Boston professor urged the graduating class to forget their ambitions and go on relief. The class orator at New York University sounded the same refrain. Now, I've seen a lot more of life than either of these two speakers, have traveled wider, met more varieties of people, observed life much more intimately, so let me say something to you who have just graduated from high schools and colleges. 500,000 were graduated from American colleges this month. Are the odds 500,000 to 1 against you, then? Certainly not. 50% of that total will disqualify themselves by laziness, lack of ambition, refusal to accept responsibility, because I've found that half of the world is as intent on not succeeding as the other half is intent on success. So your opposition is sliced in half. Sickness, temperament, liquor, gambling will cut heavily into the remainder. The best dramatization of what I'm telling you is the Kentucky Derby. Last year, 110 horses were nominated for the Derby. These nominees were well trained and coddled in every possible way that great trainers could devise. Of the 110 horses, only 10 of them went to the post. It's the same in everyday life. The odds are always less when the chips are on the lines. So don't worry about the opposition and competition that will be offered you. It will be much less than you expect. And don't worry, either, if you won't be able to go to college, now that you have finished high school. University of Southern California recently conferred a degree of Master of Science on a boy who never even finished high school, Walt Disney. It wasn't so long ago that Disney and his brother, Roy, didn't have enough money to eat decently. They'd go into a restaurant and order one dinner with 2 sets of knives, forks, and spoons. You'd think, from the present goings-on, that these days are so extraordinary that the present generation should have medals struck off in their honor. It's not so. The successful men and women of this motion picture industry all had to work their way up from poor homes. Times always have been tough for the poor. Paul Muni was a poor boy. Sam Goldwyn was a glove salesman. David O. Selznick is the son of a rich man who went broke. Louis B. Mayer, power at MGM, recalls when his family didn't have enough to eat. Disney was ridiculed, and shoved around by shrewder businessmen. Had any of them been quitters, you would not know of them today. They had ambition and courage. They were tenacious. Nobody shoved them upstairs. Nobody created jobs for them, or told them how to hang on once the job was secured. Just as nobody can tell you what to do or how to do it. You've got to learn that yourself, you've got to adapt yourself to conditions, and that is a personal issue. If you listened to the radio in recent years, you heard the broadcast of two fights, the Joe Louis-Max Bear fight, and the Henry Armstrong-Barney Ross fight. Bear quit, and you heard the referee count him out while Bear rested on one knee. In the Armstrong-Ross fight, Ross took a terrible lacing, but refused to let his handlers or the referee stop the fight. In life, you can take the count on one knee as Max Bear did, or you can imitate Barney Ross. You can quit or you can carry on. I'll let you decide which to emulate. You are living in an age that is distinguished for the greatest liberalism that ever has been focused on the American scene. Legislators are occupying themselves with the problems of the poor, which didn't happen years ago. There are civilian conservation corps camps and the Works Progress Administration. The world is interested in relieving distress in much greater measure than ever before. Governments actually tell off dictators and speak on behalf of weaker nations. All of these things are encouraging. So, to all of you kids who are starting out, don't be too overwhelmed by surface indications. The weather forecast still is weather clear, track fast, and the rewards are greater than ever before. Don't ask too much of life, that's all. In the final analysis, if you get just a little success, and a lot of love, they'll hold up your hand as the winner. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 19. How to Budget Your Time. Before you can market your personal services effectively, you must lay out a program for yourself based upon an appropriate budget of your time. Nothing will be of greater assistance than compliance with this suggestion, a fact that will be surprising when you begin to make up your first-time budget, surprising because of your discovery of the amount of time you have been wasting through lack of a budget. All well-managed businesses are operated on a budget system. The marketing of your services is a business. Moreover, to you it is the most important business in the world. It is a business that you can conduct efficiently only by organizing the hours at your disposal, so they will yield a greater return than you could get from them without a budget. Experience has proved that the following schedule is one that the majority of people can easily follow. It has also proved that it is an efficient schedule. 8 hours for sleep. 8 hours for one's vocation. 4 hours for recreation and health. 2 hours for study and preparation. 2 hours for extra service for the benefit of others, without pay. Take inventory of yourself before creating any plans for marketing your personal services effectively and budget your time as nearly as possible to conform to this schedule. Your attention is called emphatically to the last 2 periods of 2 hours each. These are the most profitable hours because the use that you make of these hours will determine more than any other factor whether you market your services effectively. You will observe that this schedule calls for 2 hours a day that must be devoted to study and preparation for greater efficiency in connection with your occupation. The majority of people have no such provision in their time budget, if, in fact, they have any budget. You will also observe that the schedule includes 2 definite hours that must be devoted to rendering extra service for which one is not paid. This fixes approximately the time that one must put into one's work in following the habit of rendering service that is greater in quantity than one is paid for. The proportion is 1/4 of the time allotted for one's vocation. If you follow this schedule, you will find ways and means of doing approximately 1/4 more work in the future than you have been doing in the past. The majority of people can easily follow this part of the schedule. It does not mean that one must be on duty 12 hours a day instead of 8. It means that one should accomplish in 8 hours as much as one has heretofore been accomplishing in 12 hours. These additional 2 hours of quantity of service may be rendered in many ways other than by merely being on the job 2 hours longer. For example, the equivalent of 2 extra hours may be delivered by 1. Greater cooperation with fellow employees and management. 2. Personal conduct that constitutes a more pleasing personality. 3. Greater skill in connection with one's efforts. 4. Working with a definite goal or amount of work to be performed, as salesmen work on definite sales quotas. 5. Working in a spirit of enthusiasm and genuine interest. The following schedule represents fairly the budget actually followed by the average person because of indifference. The time budget one should not follow. 8 hours for labor that is performed with one eye on the time clock and one's thoughts on quitting time. 8 hours for sleep. 8 hours for miscellaneous dissipation of one's energies, ranging all the way from gin parties and habits of intemperance in eating, drinking, and sex indulgence, to even more destructive habits. Check this schedule carefully and compare it with your use of time. This will constitute a most important part of your self-analysis. Check yourself against this schedule with courage and frankness. Do not make the mistake of giving yourself the benefit of all doubts. Reverse the rule and analyze yourself with merciless accuracy. Remember again that you are where you are and what you are because of your own conduct. Find out if your conduct is lifting you up the ladder of success or lowering you to failure. By the time you are through with this self-analysis, you may catch a glimpse of some of the habits that have been standing between you and the station in life you would like to attain. Also, you may reach the conclusion that there is something which you must do for yourself in marketing your personal services effectively. Unless you are an unusual person, this analysis will bring to your attention many changes of habits that you must make before you can hope to market your personal services effectively. You cannot be successful without paying the price of success. The price that must be paid has been clearly described. Not the least important part of this price is definitely outlined in this chapter. Before any reputable physician will undertake to prescribe a remedy for the ills of a patient, he will insist upon making a thorough diagnosis to ascertain what are the patient's ills. Diagnosis is the most important part of the physician's work. The same is true of the person who markets personal services effectively. He must begin by ascertaining what his weaknesses are, and when they have been discovered, he must form habits that will either eliminate or bridge those weaknesses so they will not work against him. This book will probably be of little value to all who, through either neglect or indifference, fail to follow the plan of self-analysis here described. Before leaving this chapter, I feel impelled to ask the reader to analyze the last 8-hour period of the time budget one should not follow. I have helped a large number of men and women to emancipate themselves from misery and want by aiding them in making an analysis of this 8-hour period of the day, which constitutes the pivotal point of one's life at which failure may be turned into success, or success into failure, as the result of the way these 8 hours are used. Let it be clearly understood that I am not a reformer, nor have I any bill of complaint against those who wish to relax through play that may not be entirely conventional, because play and relaxation are just as important as labor and study. That which I have to say to the readers of this book in the subsequent paragraphs of this chapter is intended as a warning to those who devote the entire 8-hour period to what they call relaxation and play. This is a swing age which has been keyed up to the highest pitch of action. If it is stepped up much higher, the insane asylums will be filled with those who have cracked up. Millions of people, who ought to be seriously interested in marketing their services effectively, have been caught in this maelstrom of speed that is whirling them around ever faster and faster until they have completely lost balance. These pleasure-bound unfortunates not only use up 8 hours in the mad whirl, but they cut in on the 8-hour period allotted for sleep and use up from 2 to 6 hours of that period. This has the effect of cutting into the 8-hour period allotted for work and robbing it of 2 to 6 hours through lowered efficiency. I know a great number of young people still in their 20s who look old and have far too little endurance. These young people are shortening their own lives and robbing themselves of the most vital asset they possess in marketing their services effectively. The human body is so organized that it requires 8 hours of complete relaxation in sleep out of every 24. Human society is so organized that at least 8 hours out of every 24 must be devoted to rendering useful service in one form or another. These 2 8-hour periods cannot be whittled down or robbed for other purposes without a price that means failure. The third period of 8 hours is the only period that one can afford to gamble with under any circumstances. This third 8-hour period holds the key to one's future because the manner in which it is used affects for weal or for woe the other 2 8-hour periods. It is the period that requires the closest attention because the freedom it provides often serves as an invitation to indulge in the attractions being indulged in by others. We are all more or less the victims of habit. The 2 8-hour periods allotted to work and sleep by their very nature more or less force one to acquire sane habits. If a person chooses to steal time from the 8-hour sleep period, nature steps in sooner or later and stops the practice temporarily by sending him to the hospital. If a person misappropriates a part of the 8-hour work period, the law of economic necessity steps in and calls a halt, as one must have food and clothing and a place to sleep. The third 8-hour period, however, is a freelance period that may be either wasted in dissipation or used as a period of preparation for greater efficiency and greater earning capacity, as one elects. Watch your habits during this 8-hour period because those habits hold the secret of your future, no matter who you are or what may be your calling in life. This period offers the only hope available to the person who is poverty-stricken but desires riches. It is the starting point of the person who aspires to a position of independence and freedom. When you come to analyze yourself for the purpose of discovering how many of the causes of failure are standing in your way, you will discover that most, if not all, of those disclosed by your analysis have grown out of your habits of waste during this 8-hour period. If you work for others and desire promotion and larger income, you will find the answer in this 8-hour recreational period. You will find it nowhere else. We are all victims of the power of suggestion. Most of our habits are acquired through the influence of other people around us. This is an age of wasteful, destructive habits, and the price of escape from these habits is eternal vigilance. It is a price that must be paid by every person who markets his personal services effectively. Gin parties are very exciting. To some, they are very interesting. To all, they are destructive. If you have not the willpower to resist the temptation to join your friends in parties of this kind, you had better look for new friends whose habits will tempt you in a more profitable direction. These parties, so popular in this age, collect a heavy toll in 2 ways from all who indulge in them. Their victims pay in loss of efficiency, which means loss of earning capacity, and they pay sooner or later in loss of health. Young people can, because of the endurance of youth, make tremendous inroads upon their vitality without apparent effects. There comes a time, however, when these debts against one's health must be paid. Nature attends to this. She keeps a set of books in which every item is recorded. Moreover, she forces the individual to become his or her own bookkeeper. The charges compiled through the indiscretions of youth are collected through the infirmities of old age. A little while ago, I was called to a hospital to visit a former schoolmate whose habits of youth have piled up a huge account against his old age reserve. He had not yet reached old age, but his account had been so grossly overdrawn that nature brought him into the debtor's court for settlement. He was suffering from partial paralysis of the brain. In plain English, he was on the road to insanity. All this may sound like a prohibitionist's preachment against drink. It is more than that. This acquaintance had cut himself down through excesses in eating, drinking, and sexual expression for over 10 years, using up his 8-hour recreational period and making serious inroads upon the other 2. I went to see him at the hospital for the purpose of helping him out of his financial difficulties. Excesses take a financial toll as well as a physical toll. I have never desired to be a reformer or a preacher. This is a book on the subject of marketing personal services effectively. Nothing can be marketed effectively unless the product to be marketed has value. It has been my aim throughout these pages to describe what constitutes valuable services. It is hoped that some suggestion or statement may throw light upon your own situation and point out the way to a more effective marketing of your personal services. During my public career, I have observed the methods used by thousands of successful men in selling their way through life. Space does not permit a description of the methods used by all these men, but I have chosen from the group one man whose principles of selling himself are described in detail. The man chosen is Henry Ford, known the world over for his ability to get whatever he wants without violating the rights of his fellow men. I have chosen Ford for my analysis of men who successfully sell their way through life, because he has used the same principles every successful person must use. I have chosen Ford for the reason that I have had the privilege of closely observing him over so long a period of years that I feel sure I understand the principles underlying his success. Do not browse through the Ford analysis or read it hurriedly. It is worthy of slow reading and careful analysis, because it conveys the material of which you may easily build your own successful life. The story has not been included to glorify Ford. The sole purpose in publishing it is to place in the hands of every reader an accurate outline of the plans and principles that have made America's most successful businessman the success that everyone knows him to be. You are especially requested to study carefully the rating given Ford on the principles of individual achievement. After you finish reading this book, come back to the Ford analysis and take inventory of yourself, measuring yourself honestly and frankly by these principles. If you do this faithfully, you may discover what the major points of difference are between you and Henry Ford. The discovery, if accurately made, may both shock and benefit you. It is well worth trying. This book on personal promotion would hardly be complete without a description of the methods by which the world's leading industrialist lifted himself from poverty to plenty. As you read the analysis of Henry Ford's astounding achievements, you should remember he was no outstanding genius at the start, had but little schooling and was a pioneer in a new industry at a time when the entire country was unfriendly toward him and his horseless buggy. Do not make the mistake of assuming that Ford began in an age blessed with greater opportunities than those available at the present. The truth is just the opposite, and coincidental as it may seem, Ford's influence on civilization has actually had much to do with creating the more extensive opportunities that exist today. His influence has helped to bring the country and the city dweller into closer contact because of the wonderful system of good roads that belts the entire nation. He has provided employment for more people than any other man living. He has proved that an American citizen may start from scratch, without pull or financial backing, and accumulate a vast fortune without violating the rights of others, and I wish to emphasize one truth above all others, namely, the principles employed by Ford in his climb to opulence are understandable and usable by any person who has the ambition to appropriate them. Did you ever think of that? Ford is a self-made man in the true sense of the term. If ever a man sold his way through life successfully, with his own brain and his own ideas, that man is Henry Ford. His story has been included in this book because his entire life represents one of the finest jobs of selling the world has ever known. There has been no scandal connected with the Ford methods of selling. He has helped everyone whom he has influenced. Every dollar of his fortune is being used constructively. He has established an all-time high standard of business ethics that every other individual might do well to emulate. I have begun my analysis of Ford by describing the one principle which, more than all others, has been responsible for the stupendous success he has achieved, the principle of singleness of purpose. That was all Ford had as an operating capital to begin with, but it was enough. Remember this, you who wish to emulate Ford, and remember, too, that you are reading an analysis of the number one citizen and successful businessman of the entire world. Here's a good joke to play on your employer: get to your work a little earlier and leave a little later than you are supposed to. Handle his tools as if they belong to you. Go out of your way to say a kind word about him to your fellow workers. When there is extra work that needs to be done, volunteer to do it. Do not show surprise when he gets on to you and offers you the head of the department or a partnership in the business, for this is the best part of the joke. How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by Napoleon Hill, 1939. 20. The Master Plan for Getting a Position. There is a definite, surefire method by which anyone may procure any position for which he is qualified. I will describe the method in detail, but first take notice I did not say that this plan would enable anyone to hold any job he might procure. Getting a job is one thing, holding it is something else. Inasmuch as the major portion of this book has been devoted to a description of the principles by which people hold jobs, I will not here repeat what I have stated on that subject. I have been asked often, how did you manage to interview all those successful men who helped you to organize the law of success philosophy? How did you induce them to give up so much of their time? My answer is, it is simple to get the opportunity to talk with men if you approach them through some subject in which they are interested, and do most of your talking about them. I might say the same thing in connection with procuring a position. It is easy to get any position one wants, providing one has the ability to fill it and makes the right sort of approach in applying for the position. Through the pages that follow, I am addressing men and women who are interested in procuring some sort of a position, or some form of personal contact requiring the cooperation of one or more other people. The advice I offer is intended solely for the general guidance of anyone seeking to get the cooperation of others. The details should be changed to fit the particular needs of each individual, and should not be copied verbatim from this book. Your own judgment will tell you what to do. Let us assume you are desirous of procuring a position with the Standard Oil Company, that you are willing to start anywhere the company wishes to place you, your major desire being an opportunity to demonstrate what sort of services you can render. Very well, here is a step-by-step outline of the approach which, if changed to fit your particular personality, could hardly fail to get you the desired opportunity. First, decide what particular position with the Standard Oil Company you desire, then make a complete list, in writing, of all your qualifications to fill that position. If you feel the list of your capabilities is inadequate after you have placed it on paper, go to work and prepare yourself through study and observation of some other person who is filling a position similar to the one you want, until you are sure you are ready for the position. Second, write out a list of the following 17 principles of success and grade yourself accurately on each, the grade running from 0 to 100% on each principle. Under each of the principles state in detail why you believe you are entitled to the credit you have given yourself, what definite proof you have to offer that your grading is accurate. Grade yourself anywhere from 0 to 100%. A definite major aim in life. Under this heading describe your major purpose in life, and show that it is connected with the position you are seeking with the Standard Oil Company. If the particular position you wish is only to serve as a stepping stone, and you are aiming for a higher place, say so and give your reasons for believing you can advance to the better position. Self-confidence. State your reason for the grading you give yourself on this principle, and clearly indicate that you know the difference between self-confidence and egotism. Initiative. Under this heading give illustrations of occasions on which you have acted without supervision, on your own initiative, and state to what extent this procedure is a habit with you. The habit of saving. Under this heading make it clear that you have formed the habit of budgeting both your time and your income, and that you recognize the necessity of this sort of self-discipline as a means of attaining the object of your major aim in life. Imagination. Give illustrations of occasions on which you have used your imagination. The best possible method by which you can do this impressively will be to indicate to what extent you used imagination in familiarizing yourself with the requirements of the position you are seeking. Enthusiasm. State to what extent you have your enthusiasm under control, and indicate your knowledge of the difference between passive and active enthusiasm. Indicate that your greatest enthusiasm is associated with your desire to procure and fill the position you are seeking with the Standard Oil Company, giving your reasons for your enthusiasm. Self-control. Give your reasons for your grading on this principle, and state definitely how you make application of the principle as a means of striking a balance between your head and your heart, or in other words state to what extent you use self-discipline to help your head manage your emotions. Above all else, indicate that your self-control is sufficient to enable you to avoid becoming involved in controversies of other people, that it is sufficient to enable you to think for yourself, without the aid of self-appointed leaders or propagandists. The habit of doing more than you are paid to do. Here is your big opportunity to land the position you are seeking. Give a detailed statement of why you have formed the habit of doing more work and better work than you are paid to do. This is the most important of the 17 principles as far as the procuring of a position is concerned. Moreover, It is the principle of major importance in connection with the holding of a position after you procure it. Therefore, make a strong statement as to your reasons for observing this principle as a part of your philosophy of life. A pleasing personality. In explaining your reasons for your rating on this important principle, give at least 5 definite illustrations of qualities you have that entitle you to rate as having a pleasing personality. Above all, give a detailed statement of your personal attitude toward others, whether it is at all times friendly and cooperative, and describe your disposition in negotiating with friends, relatives, and business associates. Accurate thinking. Make it clear that you are grading yourself on this important principle only as it applies to your relationship to the position you are seeking. Give your reasons for believing you can think accurately in connection with the position you are seeking, and be sure they are based upon facts easily discernible from your statement. Concentration of effort. State clearly your reasons for your grading on your ability to concentrate your mind upon any given task and keep it there until that task has been completed. Be sure, also, to indicate the extent to which you have formed the habit of concentrating your willpower upon the attainment of your major aim in life. Cooperation. Clearly describe your reasons for following the habit of working with other people in a spirit of harmony, and explain that you do this not merely on occasion but as a matter of continuous habit. Profiting by failures. No one is expected to be infallible, therefore state frankly that you make mistakes, but indicate to what extent you try to avoid duplicating, and be sure to describe how you manage to profit by your own failures and the failures of other people. Indicate, also, that you know the difference between failure and temporary defeat, and say that you never accept defeat as anything more than an inspiration to make a fresh and a more determined start. Tolerance. In explaining your grading on this important subject, clearly indicate that you understand tolerance to mean an open mind on all subjects, toward all people. Be sure to describe the extent to which you practice tolerance. The Golden Rule applied. Grade yourself on your application of this great law of human conduct, and explain why you follow the habit of placing yourself in the other fellow's place when reaching decisions that in any way affect him. The habit of health. In explaining your grading on this subject, be sure to indicate that you do not suffer with imaginary symptoms of illness, that you follow the habit of attending to your diet, exercise, and elimination, and be sure to indicate clearly that you do not have a bad disposition due to your failure to keep your sewer system cleaned out. The mastermind applied. The mastermind is a principle through which one or more people may coordinate their efforts in a spirit of perfect harmony for a definite purpose. Indicate definitely that you understand the value of such coordination of effort, that you follow the habit of observing this important principle, and explain how you believe you can make use of it in connection with the position you are seeking. After you have graded yourself on the foregoing 17 principles of personal achievement, write the following letter, or some modified form of it, and mail the letter to the manager of the department of the Standard Oil Company in which you are seeking a position. Mr. Walter Teagle, President, Standard Oil Company, New York City. My dear Mr. Teagle, with this letter, I am sending you an accurate statement of the reasons why I deserve the position off with your company, and with this statement, I am sending also an accurate grading of myself on each of the 17 principles of success, together with a detailed explanation under each principle as to why the grade was given. Now, here is the condition under which I ask you to give me the position I am seeking. Let me work in the position for 1 month without compensation. At the end of the month, if I have not demonstrated, beyond all question of doubt, that I have the sort of material in me that any great corporation such as the Standard Oil Company would naturally be seeking, I will step aside, but before doing so I will pay your company a reasonable sum to reimburse it for the actual cost of the supervision given to me during the month's trial. Omit this last offer, if you choose. If you want the trial period to go beyond 1 month, that will be satisfactory with me. All I ask during the demonstration is that you allow me to put into my work the hours and the sort of effort I believe to be necessary to prove that I am not merely just another person seeking a job. What I am really seeking is not a job, but an opportunity to earn a place in your company. Will you give me this opportunity? Very cordially. Have the letter neatly typed, and also have your grading on the 17 principles of achievement and your statement of reasons why you believe yourself qualified for the position you seek typed. If you desire to apply for a position with several different firms, send a similar letter, with the grading and the statement of your capabilities, to each firm, but be sure to take the time to investigate each different firm's methods of doing business, its problems, and so forth, so you will be in a position to make your application fit the job you seek. In grading yourself on the 17 principles, use your own imagination and so word your explanations of your grading that the person to whom you are applying for a position will quickly see that you are familiar with the requirements of such a position. Remember, as you prepare your application for a position, that you will be practically sure to get a favorable hearing if you so word your letter and your grading that you definitely convey the impression you are willing to prove your ability before asking anyone to purchase your services. Remember, also, that you will not receive encouragement unless you choose some position in which a person of your personality, education, and experience is needed. Do sufficient advance investigation to convince yourself the position for which you apply really needs you, then go after it and sell yourself to the man who has the yes or the no over the job. Do not make the mistake of grading yourself too high on all the 17 principles. Grade yourself down on at least a few of them, and explain why your rating is not higher. I once knew a young man who applied for a position through this plan who was so lacking in modesty that he graded himself 100% on each of the 17 principles. It might have helped him had he known that not even Henry Ford could accurately grade himself that high. If you do a good job of grading yourself, and go into details to show how you arrived at your rating, you will have a marvelous sales letter that will interest the right person in your services in the grading alone. Remember, as you explain each of your grades, that your explanation is in fact your strongest selling argument on your behalf. The day that you mail your application, send the following telegram to the person to whom you send the application, and do not forget to prepay the message. Walter Teagle, President Standard Oil Company, New York City. In today's mail, I am sending you an important letter that I hope your secretary will deliver to you promptly. Attach a good, unmounted photograph of yourself to your letter, one that has been recently taken. Send with the letter the names and addresses of 5 references, preferably people engaged in established businesses or bankers. State your age, nationality, and schooling. If your application is properly prepared and you select with care the firms to whom you send it, you can safely count on procuring a position if you include at least 10 different firms on your list. In other words, you will be practically sure of finding what you want by seeking it in 10 different directions. Let me emphasize that you should use your own imagination and initiative when it comes to the actual writing of the letter of application. The only thing you should not change is the policy of offering your services for 1 month, or longer, strictly on trial. Everything else in the letter may be altered to suit your personality, or to make the letter fit your needs to better advantage. If you follow these instructions carefully and fail to get the results you desire, you may send the author a copy of your letter and your personal grading on the 17 principles of success, and he will determine wherein you have failed. Be prepared, however, to back up all you promise in your letter, in the event that you are given a trial. Any lack of sincerity on your part will be quickly detected if you are given a position, and this will not help your case. I may as well tell you, here and now, that there always has been a place, and there always will be a place, for a man or a woman who has ability and sincerely follows the habit of rendering more service and better service than that for which he or she is paid. No matter how many business depressions may come and go, there will always be a place for the person willing to render such service. Moreover, the rendering of service in this spirit is the surest way to promotion. If you grade yourself accurately on each of the 17 principles of success and discover after completing your grading that your percentage is too low on any of the principles, you will have made a valuable discovery about yourself which, if acted upon, will enable you to prepare yourself to bridge whatever weakness you may possess. This grading should prove to be a profitable checkup on yourself, and it might well turn out to be the most important turning point of your life, providing it brings you face to face with yourself and portrays your personality as it really exists. You need this self-analysis, whether you wish to use it to procure a position or not. Everyone needs such a checkup, and especially during these times, when so many people are trying to get something for nothing, and thousands are killing off their initiative, self-confidence, and definiteness of purpose to go on government relief. If you are willing to throw yourself on charity and live without rendering useful service, this analysis will do you no good. It is intended only for the person who wishes to be self-determining and who truly is willing to earn whatever he demands of life. After preparing the copy for your letter of application and your personal grading on the 17 principles, if you have a feeling that your case has not been properly prepared, you may send a copy of your letter and grading to the author, and either he or one of his assistants will look over your work and offer such suggestions for its improvement as may seem to be needed. Under no circumstances, however, will the author or his assistants undertake to write the copy for these documents. You now have in your hands, in this simple plan, the finest of all possible methods of selling yourself into any position for which you are qualified. The psychology back of the plan has been tried in thousands of cases, and I have never known it to fail to produce the desired results. The spirit of the plan is far more important than the mere wording of the application. Let me emphasize this important truth: it is so seldom that any person applies for a position on this sort of basis, that those who do so benefit by the law of contrast. Not one executive out of 100 would refuse to investigate the merits of a person offering to work on the basis of demonstrating his ability before trying to collect pay. Why, do you know that some of the largest corporations in the world have regularly employed talent scouts out searching for young men and young women with just such a spirit of willingness to render service as the one here described? When such a person is found, he or she is quickly employed, and the gates to quick advancement are eternally left ajar. One final word: if you find the 17 principles helpful in procuring an opportunity to demonstrate your ability, think how much more helpful they may be if you make intelligent application of these principles after you get your foot inside the door. In other words, do not stop by using these universal principles of success to induce someone to give you a position, but go further and so use these principles that you can collect whatever you want or demand of life, as effectively as Henry Ford has used them. Read the grading of Henry Ford on the 17 principles, as given in another chapter, then compare yourself with Ford on each of these grades and you may discover wherein you differ from Ford. The chances are 1,000 to 1 that the difference between you and Ford is not so much one of intelligence or education, as it is in application and use of these 17 principles of success, and the chances are equally great that you could so apply these principles in your chosen calling that you may go as far in your field as Ford has in his.